Again, appreciate everyone being on here this evening. We're going to be looking in Joshua chapter 3 tonight. The title of our lesson is I Am Lord of All the Earth. And so we're going to be looking in Joshua chapter 3. And where we are on the east side of the Jordan River. They haven't come over yet. This is the chapter where they do come over. So, verse 1. Then Joshua rose early in the morning, and they set out from Acacia Grove and came to the Jordan, he and all the children of Israel, and lodged there before they crossed over. So it was after 3 days that the officers went through the camp, and they commanded the people, saying, when you see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God, and the priests, the Levites, bearing it, then you shall set out from your place and go after it. Yet there shall be a space between you and it, about 2,000 cubits by measure. Do not come near it, that you may know the way by which you must go, for you have not passed this way before. Joshua said to the people, sanctify yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you. Then Joshua spoke to the priests, saying, take up the ark of the covenant, cross over before the people. So they took up the ark of the covenant and went before the people. And the Lord said to Joshua, this day I will begin to exalt you in the sight of all Israel, that they may know that as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. You shall command the priests who bear the ark of the covenant, saying, when you have come to the edge of the water of the Jordan, you shall stand in the Jordan. So Joshua said to the children of Israel, come here and hear the words of the Lord your God. And Joshua said, by this you shall know that the living God is among you, and that he will without fail drive out from before you the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Hivites and the Perizzites and the Girgashites and the Amorites and the Jebusites. Behold, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth is crossing before you into the Jordan. Now therefore take for yourselves 12 men from the tribes of Israel, one man from every tribe, and it shall come to pass, as soon as the soles of the feet of the priests who bear the ark of the Lord of all the earth, shall rest in the waters of the Jordan, that the waters of the Jordan shall be cut off, the waters that come down from upstream, and they shall stand as a heap. And that's what happens. So we'll go ahead and pause there. We'll read the remainder of the chapter probably before it's all said and done. But let's just go ahead and start looking at it. Our first question is, how does verse 10 pertain to God being God of all the earth? So there in verse 10, Joshua says, by this you shall know that the living God is among you. He's going to drive out the Canaanites, the Hittites, all the ites. There's a lot of ites. All the surround, all the inhabitants and where they were from. So how does that verse pertain to God being being the Lord of all the earth? Anyone want to help us out with that? Go ahead, Michael.
Well, the Lord, of course, is the creator of the heavens and the earth.
Okay. So specifically within verse 10, and it touches a little bit on, we read a verse this morning actually in the lesson. Does anybody remember how, because here the Lord says, and this is just as they're about to cross, Lord says, I will drive them out. How did the Lord drive them out? Anybody remember? Go ahead, Mark.
Well, I don't know if that's what you mean, but little by little was part of it.
Okay. You remember what he used?
Hornets,
Yeah. And that he
yeah.
was he was going to use nature. And that passage is actually back in where the Lord promises he's going to do it. It's back in Exodus chapter 23. And Michael, this does speak to him, of course, being the creator, and that the creator has power over creation, even frankly, down to the bugs.
Sure.
And so in Exodus chapter 23 is, of course, this is well before the fact, but the Lord tells them what he's going to do. This is Exodus 23 at verse let's look at verse 26. We mentioned some of the promises made this morning that their clothing would not wear out. He also, one of the things that was going to happen, verse 26, no one shall suffer miscarriage or be barren in your land. I will fulfill the number of your days. I will send my fear before you. I will cause confusion among all the people to whom you come, and will make all your enemies turn their backs to you. I will send hornets before you, which shall drive out the Hivite, the Canaanite, the Hittite from before you. But then he says how he's going to do it. And Mark touched on this. I will not drive them out from you in 1 year, lest the land become desolate and the beasts of the field become too numerous for you. Little by little I will drive them out from before you until you have increased and you inherit the land. And while certainly the Lord was still wanted them to do their part, um, but the Lord had done so much, and he was frankly able to do it with just the bugs, just the hornets that he was. And anyway, it's just you think about the Lord of all the earth, and that even the bugs do the Lord's bidding. And when the Lord says drive them out, the bugs drive them out. And like I said, I know those who are left, of course, Israel was expected to drive them out, and that's where they end up falling short. Um, but it's an impressive picture, and that the Lord did not that they the Lord in His wisdom did not drive anybody out, and I think He was testing them to see if they would obey. The bugs obeyed, and I guess my point is the Lord could have sent more hornets and driven them all out at once and not left a soul there. The Lord could have done that, but he doesn't do that. And so a remnant remains, and so they need to deal with the remnant, but also that business about the Lord drove them out little by little. He did not want nature, the saying, nature hates a vacuum. He drives them out little by little because he doesn't want the vineyards to go into disrepair. He doesn't want the cities to be overtaken by nature. And so he does it little by little, giving them time to increase further, Israel time to increase further, as hopefully the Canaanites decrease further and are driven out. But anyway, back to our passage in Joshua, and as they are about to cross the Jordan, and he says, "By this you shall know that the living God is among you, that he will without fail drive out from before you all these individuals." And he just did it with the bugs. He just sends the hornets. Um, I don't know about you. I don't like hornets. Um, by the way, Michael, this is a private conversation between me and Michael now. I blew out all that beehive back in the shed
Oh,
yesterday. They're all finally
thank you.
gone
Thank you.
because we opened up the shed doors. When was it, Michael? Like a couple months ago?
Yeah.
And there's just bees
Oh, man.
everywhere. And you want to guess whether or not I went into the shed with all the bees? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And so just imagine swarms of hornets
Sure.
infesting where you're living, and it's just, we got to get out of here.
We,
Got to get out of here. So anyway, the Lord of all the earth, even to the bugs. Our second question says it pertains to verse 13. So in verse 13, of course, dealing with the crossing of the Jordan, as soon as the soles of the feet of the priests who bear the ark, we know what was going to happen. So how does verse 13 pertain to God, to the Lord? And I kept, for some reason on the paper, I put God, but it is Lord there. The word is Lord, the I am. So how does verse 13 pertain to the Lord being Lord of all the earth? Anyone?
Are you
What does he do with the Jordan River?
he makes it stand up in a heap.
Yep.
Mhm.
And you have that picture, and there's a little bit as the generation that fell in the wilderness is gone, and so those who were much younger, they would have seen they would have seen what happened to the Red Sea, right? Those who were those are of a certain age. Now, all the children who were born in the wilderness over those 40 years, well, they never saw it. So there would have been a whole lot of people, excuse me, there would have been a whole lot of people who never saw the Red Sea crossing. Some would have, who were younger than 20 um, at that time. But here, I never noticed before or never thought about, but there is a difference between this and the Red Sea. When they cross the Red Sea, the way that it's phrased is the sea was a wall on their left and on their right. And so it, you know, judging by the pictures we've seen, you know how that goes. Um, and that's all it says. It doesn't say how far the walls of water were, but it does say one was a wall on their left and one was a wall on their right. 1 Corinthians 10, it uses that imagery. It says all were baptized into Moses. And so, what I would suggest, and it's a strange phrase, if you're looking, you know, from some distance away, it really would have looked like they were walking through the water. You wouldn't have seen them, you know. But here it's actually a little different. It says there in, let's see, verse 13, when they touch the water. So verse 15 is, and as those who bore the ark came to the Jordan, and the feet of the priests who bore the ark dipped in the edge of the water, because the Jordan overflows all its banks during the whole time of harvest, that the waters which came down from upstream stood still and rose in a heap very far away at Adam. So the waters that went down into the sea of the Arabah, the salt sea, failed and were cut off. And so the waters were heaped up very far away. Okay, so they're heaped up, and I should have looked. I didn't look to see where this city was, if they know where Adam is. But it makes that point. The waters were heaped up very far away. And so the waters are just cut off. And so it's not like they were walking, you know, through walls of water, one on their left, one on their right. The waters were heaped up very far away, and they're crossing on dry ground. And so you might, you know, I don't know if there's a significance there. Um, but you know, when they cross the Red Sea, um, perhaps it's in the Lord's wisdom. We know what's going to happen to those walls of water when a certain someone tries to chase them through the Red Sea, and the walls are going to come crashing down. The walls of water are going to come crashing down on Pharaoh and his armies, or on the armies of Pharaoh. But here, of course, no one's chasing them, so there's no need for the walls of water to be prepped, so to speak, to crush anyone who's following after them. You might also think about a wide a wide entrance was being made into the promised land, that the waters are being heaped up very far away, and there they are, they're crossing over. um
Hey, John.
yeah, go ahead.
Excuse me. Side note says that was about 900 meters, so it would be about approximately 3,000 feet.
As far as what?
The water.
As far as, is that how wide the Jordan is, or are they talking that's where Adam is?
On Josh 3:4, it says that is about 3,000 feet or 900 meters.
Well,
On
we'll
the
talk about
NIV.
that, because what that's speaking about there in verse 4 says, there shall be a space between you and it, about 2,000 cubits by measure. So what that is, the priests were supposed to go on ahead, and the number of people are following at that distance. That's the distance they're supposed to keep as they enter in. But I would have to do more investigating to know where Adam was. But anyway, just the fact that once again God is cutting the waters off. And when you think about it, you know, when you think about the waters being cut off or the water splitting, it's real. If you don't know about a certain other account, you would say it happened twice: the Red Sea and the Jordan. It happens more than that. We'll talk about that here in a second, though. But anyway, our third question. So, as Israel crosses the Jordan, who and what would they walk by? So the command is given, and so you get that picture in your minds. When when specifically, and when specifically were the waters cut off? Something happened. Says when the priest's feet touched the water, when their heels dipped in. With the Red Sea, it was when Moses and the staff. But here it's when as the feet of the priests who bore the ark dipped in the edge of the water. And you might think about the faith that that took, because the waters were not dry when the priests first set foot into the Jordan. That it's not until their foot touched water and then all of a sudden it's dried and it's heaped up. And so you might think about that picture as well. And so the priests would not go all the way across the Jordan. Now let me put this one. Let's go ahead and read the rest of the account. Let's see. So we left off at verse 13, verse 14. And so it was when the people set out from their camp to cross over the Jordan, with the priests bearing the ark of the covenant before the Lord. And as those who bore the ark came to the Jordan, and the feet of the priests who bore the ark dipped in the edge of the water, for the Jordan overflows all its banks during the whole time of harvest, that the waters which came down from upstream stood still and rose in a heap very far away at Adam, the city that is beside Zaratan. So the waters that went down into the sea of the Arabah, the Salt Sea, failed and were cut off. The people crossed over for Jordan. Then the priests who bore the ark of the covenant of the Lord stood firm on dry ground in the midst of the Jordan. And all Israel crossed over on dry ground until all the people had crossed over. So you have this picture of the priests going into the Jordan, the water's cut off, and they're a good way away, like Keith was saying, that space about 2,000 cubits by measure. And we'll talk more about that here in just a second. But the priests don't go to the other bank. They stop in the midst of the Jordan. And then so everybody who goes by, and I can't remember the number, I'd have to look up the number, but this is a lot of people. This is a whole lot of people. And all of those people that are coming into the promised land, all of Israel that's coming to the promised land, what do they all have to walk by to get there?
The priest, and aren't they holding the Ark of the Covenant?
Everyone's got to come by the Ark of the Covenant.
Right.
All of them. All of them have to come by the priests and the Ark. And we know what the Ark represents as you think about it, and you think about the mercy seat, you think about the grace of God, you think about the blood that would be on the Ark, yearly, the Day of Atonement. If you're coming into the promised land, you're coming through the Lord. That's the only way you're coming through. So you have this picture. So why do you think, and it says back in verse 4, that distance, and it gives a reason there in verse 4, yet there shall be a space between you and it about 2,000 cubits by measure. So if there's 18 inches in a cubit, you get the idea of what we're talking about. So we're talking about, roughly 3,000 feet. Do not come near it, that you may know the way by which you must go, for you have not passed this way before. I was thinking about the reasoning for this, and you have this picture. They're supposed to keep their distance from the ark, but when you cross the Jordan, you got to go right by it. But until then, they're supposed to keep their distance, and that's, 3,000 feet. That's more than half
a mile.
Do what?
About 2/3 of a mile.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a ways. There's 5,280 feet in a mile, so we're more than half a mile.
Yep.
And so they're keeping their distance until the priests get settled there, and then they're all crossing before the priests. But I was thinking about why they were supposed to keep their distance before that. Because we know from for example, the Uzzah account, what are you not allowed to do with the ark?
Touch it.
It's like, you don't touch the ark. Y'all have seen videos, I'm sure, of trucks that stopped on train tracks, and the train knows what's about to happen. And you hear the train blowing its whistle. But what can the train not do in time?
Stop.
The train cannot stop in time. On the sea, when you have huge ships, it's not like a huge ship can stop on a dime. Doesn't happen. Well, when you're dealing with this many people, if all of a sudden, if the priests carrying the ark, if they just stop and you have hundreds of thousands or 1 million plus people behind them, if the priests just stop, what are that many people going to do? It's like, no, that's why they have so much distance. It's like you don't know the way you're going. You've never been here before. So give yourself that much distance. Let the priests get out there. When they get out there and they get stationed in the middle, then you can cross. But you keep your distance. And so I was thinking about that idea of keeping your distance as well from a spiritual standpoint. When they carried the ark, again, judging by the pictures, and there are good pictures, there are bad pictures, and sometimes there's just pictures for kids. And sometimes pictures for kids are not accurate in their representation. So for example, when this is depicted, or when Jericho is depicted, and they're carrying the ark, and the ark is exposed, and you see the ark there, and you see the cherubim on the mercy seat and all that. But when the priests and when the Levites actually carried the ark was actually covered. The verse that talks about that is in Numbers. Let's look back in Numbers chapter 4. That they would cover all of the things that came from the tabernacle. So, the altar and all of those sorts of things. This is Numbers chapter 4 at verse 4. Says, "This is the service of the sons of Kohath in the tabernacle of meeting relating to the most holy things. When the camp prepares to journey, Aaron and his sons shall come, and they shall take down the covering veil and cover the ark of the testimony with it. Then they shall put on it a covering of badger skins, and spread over that a cloth entirely of blue, and they shall insert its poles." And they would carry it that way. And so you think, oh, when they walked by the ark, the ark was usually, the ark was typically kept in the Holy of Holies. And that's just where the high priest goes once a year. You could see the poles outside of it, but when we visualize them carrying the ark and we think, oh, they're seeing things that they've never seen before. No, it's still covered. It's covered by the veil. And it's covered by the badger skins on top of the veil. And it's that covering of blue and all that. So it's covered by all of those things. So then you think about perhaps a spiritual application. Things were being hidden from them. And in Jesus, what do we have? In Jesus, we have access. In Jesus, things are uncovered, if you will. And you start thinking about that picture and the spiritual the spiritual meanings of such things. But as they all go by, and again, Uzzah, don't touch the ark. Don't touch the ark, Uzzah. Don't do it. But how many of them, and I say this somewhat, I don't mean it literally, how many of them would have liked to have looked underneath the veil? I mean, they're walking by something that they were very, very rarely that close to. And as they're walking by it, it's still covered with the veil and those other things. Anyway, I just thought it was an interesting picture. You keep your distance of more than half a mile. And then for that moment, as you cross the Jordan on dry ground, you're walking right by it. So anyway, might think about it. Any questions or comments up to that point? Yeah,
Well,
go ahead,
really,
Michael.
really, you can look at the old saying, curiosity killed the cat.
Yeah, don't touch it. This is like when the ark goes to the Philistines in the time of Samuel.
Hmm.
Don't touch it. And when the Philistines send back the ark after they all had tumors, and what did the Jews have to learn? Don't touch it. But in Jesus, what do we have? When you think about that, if Jesus, we know, for example, when Jesus is on the Mount of Transfiguration, and all of a sudden Peter, James, and John wake up, and he looks a little different. He is transformed, and they are awestruck. They're absolutely awestruck. If Jesus had come looking like that his whole life, would, for example, the woman with the flow of blood, do you remember what she says? If I only
Touch the hem of your garment.
touch the hem of his garment. Would she have been willing to do that if he would have came in his transformed glory?
She'd been afraid of him, probably.
She probably would have been afraid of him. How many times, if you were a parent, would you have if Jesus would have come in his transformed glory, would you have let your child be taken up in his arms? And I guess my point is he came looking the way he did, that people were comfortable with him. And they touched him and he touched them. And nonetheless, he is the Lord. To go from the Old Testament, where it's like, don't touch it, don't look at it, don't keep your distance. And then with Jesus, what do we have? Draw near unto God, for he is drawn near unto you. And anyway, you might just think about some of the significance of those things. Okay, our fourth question is, I just wanted you to find another passage that shows God's command of nature, and whatever passage you thought of, what may be an application of that passage. So just as we're thinking about, I am Lord of all the earth, whether we're talking about the hornets or whether we're talking about the Jordan, what other passage shows God's command of nature, and what may an application be of that passage?
When he calmed the seas,
Okay. When
I
he
didn't look it
calms
up.
when he calms the sea. So what would an application be?
That he has power over all nature.
You remember what the disciples say? Then they were greatly afraid, and they said, who can this be that even the winds and the waves obey him? It's like they were afraid before, and then he calms the sea, and then it says, and then they were greatly afraid. And it's
That
like,
kind of power, that kind of awesome power is frightening to us because we don't have it.
yeah. And all of a sudden, we think of nature and we think of things outside of our control. It's like, well, who can control the weather? Well, somebody can. And all he has to say is, peace be still. And it is impressive. Anyone have any other passages that show his command of nature?
Noah and the flood in Genesis 7.
Okay. Noah and the flood, and God broke up the fountains of the deep.
Mhm.
And now what would an application be?
Yeah. Well, for me, it shows he can open up things and he can close things. He
Okay.
opens and closes.
Yep. And it is in his power. And he was able to save Noah, and he was able to condemn the earth. He was opened up the way for Noah to be saved, and he closed, frankly, the world that then existed perished, being flooded with water. And the Lord said enough was enough. Anyone have any other examples? Go ahead, Pat.
When he walked on the water,
Okay, when he walked on the water. I
So-
was,
he
Pat,
was able to totally change the I don't know exactly how to word that, but he changed how you can use water. We can't walk on water. Water flows right over us.
Okay, so Pat, so I was gonna end with that, but we won't. We still have about 5 minutes left. So I mentioned the sea parts or the waters part more than just the Red Sea. So you have the Red Sea, the waters part. Then you have the Jordan River, the waters part. In Second Kings, when you have the handoff between Elijah and Elisha, so Elijah, of course, Elijah's not going to die, but he's going to go up, as it talks about the chariots of fire appearing. This is Second Kings chapter 2 at verse 10 and on. And you have the chariot of Israel and its horsemen. This is verse 12. The mantle of Elijah, all of that happens. Let's see. This is verse 8. Now Elijah took his mantle, rolled it up, and struck the water, and it was divided this way and that, and the two of them crossed over on dry ground. It's this picture of Elijah is traveling, as you're looking at it. Elijah is leaving Israel, crossing the Jordan. He crosses the Jordan with Elisha. Elijah strikes the water and the water parts. Elijah goes up to heaven. Then Elisha, the mantle falls on him. And so now it's time for Elisha. And you remember what Elisha asked for, a double portion of his spirit. And so Elisha takes the mantle. And now, verse 13, he went back and he stood by the banks of the Jordan. He took the mantle of Elijah that had fallen from him and struck the water and said, "Where is the Lord God of Elijah?" And when he also had struck the water, it was divided this way and that, and Elisha crossed back over. So he's coming back into Israel. And so that's why I say there's more than the two partings of the water. And so here the Jordan's being parted actually twice, one with Elijah going out, one with Elisha coming back in. So you have the water of the Red Sea. They're leaving bondage. You have the water of the Jordan. They're coming into the promised land. Elijah, you have the splitting of the water. He's going to be with the Lord. You have Elisha splitting the water. He's coming back to do the Lord's bidding. And then you have Jesus, Pat, and Jesus doesn't even have to split the water. He can just walk on it. The Lord of all the earth. Jesus didn't need to split the water. It's like here they are, they're straining at the oars in that account, fighting against the wind. And the Lord is walking across the water faster than they're actually going on the water when you read that account and do the math. And it says in one of the accounts, and the Lord was going to pass them by. Anyway, it's an impressive account. We only have a couple minutes left. Anyone have any other examples from nature? How about Balaam and the donkey? You might think about how the Lord spoke to Balaam. You might think about that account. You might think about Jesus. Jesus, when he came into Jerusalem, what was he riding? A colt, the foal of a donkey, on whom no one had ever sat before. So that means that animal that Jesus rode in on, that animal was unbroken. No one had ever sat on it before. And the thing is, did Jesus need someone to break that animal? It's like, no, the animal obeys the Lord. And that's the thing, nature obeys the Lord. You might think about the fish, the miraculous catch of fish. Shows the Lord's control, the Lord of all the earth. You might think about what was the first plague in Egypt? The water to blood.
Mhm.
You think about how much death and how much unhappiness that brought. Now the parallel is, what was the first miracle?
Water to wine.
And how much joy that brought. but there's a parallel. Might think about that, the Lord's power to change. The Lord can take something normal, like water, and turn it into something wonderful as he changes the water to wine. Anyone have any others? We have less than a minute. And we'll probably go ahead, Brenda, quickly, please.
Yeah, I was going to ask
Go,
you,
Bruce.
since there were so many people crossing over, that would take quite a while, I would imagine, for them to cross over. Did the priests continually hold that ark up above the ground?
Couldn't tell you. Don't know. We'll have to stop there. Appreciate everyone being on here this evening. Hope it's been helpful for you as we've thought about the Lord of all the earth. Y'all take care.
Okay, John, thanks.
And